Rick.
It's going on.
Yes. Okay, so you should be able to click in now, and Rick is on. There you go.
Is there a motion to exit executive session? Cool. Is there a motion to exit executive session?
Recording.
I think you have to.
There's no sound. Now can you hear? Say something.
Can you hear us now?
Yes.
Wonderful, thank
Yep.
you.
Great. So I just ran through the council's president and the staff president and explained that we were having some technical difficulties tonight. We started our meeting at 6:15. We entered executive session. We exited the executive session. There was a motion to censure Joel Mulvaney that was approved by a majority of city council, and now we're moving into the rest of the regular meeting. Just as information, tonight's agenda is available online and in the back of the room. The meeting has been publicly posted, is being recorded, and is subject to Vermont's open meeting law and the council's rules of procedure, which are available online. I want to offer a warm welcome to everyone here tonight, as well as those of you joining us online. Again, thanks for your patience with us as we dealt with some technical difficulties. If you're joining us online, please keep in mind that the chat function should only be used for technical issues or difficulties, and we invite you to mute yourself when you're not speaking. The city offers online access as a convenience and will continue if we end up encountering any additional technical difficulties. Please raise your hand or signal if you would like to be recognized. I'll call on speakers in order. Allowing people who haven't spoken yet to speak first, and limiting time if necessary to do the city's business. I'd ask that you state your name for the record. And if you have any questions about process or procedure, please ask and we will get it sorted. I want to thank everyone in advance for participating in a civil way. And when I say a civil participation, we've adopted some ground rules as a body for interaction with each other, staff, and the general public. And that's one, to practice mutual respect and to assume good intent and to explain impact, to ask clarifying questions, if off course, to interrupt and redirect, Think and then act, and that means thinking about alternatives, identifying choices, thinking about consequences and project outcomes, telling your story and preparing your defense. We have an ethics check as part of our expectations of civility. We ask, is it legal? Is it in scope? Is it balanced? We honor time limits. Time limits were attentive and not repetitive. We ask the remarks be relevant and appropriate to the discussion and that they stay on subject. We ask that people don't leave with silent disagreement, that decisions be based on consensus when possible and majority when necessary. And we respect all decisions of council as final. We articulate expectations of each other. We deeply care about the city in our own way. We debate issues and not personalities. And finally, we ask that there be no texting, no email, no video games during the meeting. And with that, that will take us to adjustments to the agenda. Manager Strela Castro, are there any adjustments to the agenda?
Thank you, Mayor. No adjustments.
Councilors?
No adjustments.
All right, that takes us to visitor and communication. This is an opportunity to speak to an item that is not on tonight's agenda. If you want to speak to an item that is on tonight's agenda, I'll recognize you as we take up that item. Would anyone like to speak to visitors and communication? All right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Whitaker.
I'm invisible. I want to remind you that an outstanding public records request from April has still not been responded to. I've been to 3, maybe 4 meetings, pointing out that that's in violation of law, that these are time-sensitive records, in that these records would demonstrate the planning or lack thereof for expenditures in grant applications that are elsewhere on your agenda tonight. And in almost an absurd example, I've been asking for the basis and finances for expanding the capacity of regional dispatch in this facility, and got none, got no records. And you were surprised last Thursday night when one of your staff asks Central Vermont Public Safety Authority for $26,000 to do a capacity study. I'm like, that's just ghastly. One, to have withheld the records that would have evidenced that that capacity study hasn't been done, but 2, to have stonewalled the records through Steve McKenzie's term and through it's not okay to ignore public records law. The foundation of our transparent democracy, accountable public service is that those laws. And to ignore them, means that you're not working with a full deck. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Whitaker. Is there?
There's a hand raised.
I see a hand raised for visiting communication. Mr. Roberts? I think you're still muted, Chris.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Council. I'm here as a member of the Diversity and Equity Committee. And I just joined the meeting, so I may have missed something. My understanding is that the council was going to discuss Joanne Mulvaney and her role as chair of the committee. And I am wondering if that is going to take place tonight or if it took place in executive session, if the latter was a decision made, and can that decision be made public? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry you missed the front of the meeting because of technical difficulties. I know our sound wasn't on, but there was a motion and a second that was adopted by council to censure Joanne Mulvaney for her interjection.
Okay. So it's a censure. Was it read into the record or?
Yeah, yeah, let me see if I can read that.
You don't need to read it again. I'm just hoping it was.
Yeah, I'm going off of what the clerk does is record notes here. And it was a censure for Joel Mulvaney for disruption at last week's meetings and to complete 8 hours of anger management within 30 days.
Okay. All right, thank you. I appreciate the information.
Thank you. All right, if there are no other items for visitor communication, that will,
Mr. Mayor,
Yep.
could I? The people online have been saying that the audio was low and garbled, and I think I made a correction. I just wanted to check and see with those online whether you're hearing things better now. Anybody?
Chris, since you last spoke, can you confirm that the volume's coming through?
It is coming through, but it is still garbled.
Okay,
Well, I think that's the best we're gonna do.
yeah,
Sorry.
I apologize. Keep going with this meeting, so I'm really sorry, so. All right, so that takes us to the consent agenda. We have 4 items on the consent agenda: approval of the minutes of the regular city council meeting December 6, 2022, approval of the city warrants from the week of Wednesday, December 14, 2022, clerk's offices, licenses and permits, and authorization of a contract with the city of Montpelier for ambulance billing services. And our clerk's offices and licenses and permit, we have several licenses, and I don't know if we should read them into the record or.
The public over the years has gotten mad at me if I haven't.
Okay, let's
So, food establishment licenses for the American Legion, Asian Gourmet, Bamboo Gardens, the Elks Club, Chinatown Restaurant, Cornerstone, Domino's Pizza, Dunkin' Donuts, The Meltdown, Mr. Z's, The Moutoir, Corey Kitchen and Spirits, The Snack Shack, which of course is just seasonal, Subway, and 2 Loco Guys. Food takeout for Beverage Baron, the 2 Champlain Farms locations, North End Deli Mart and Quality Market. Entertainment licenses for the Legion, the Elks Club, the Meltdown, and the Vermont Granite Museum, and movie theater license for the Paramount.
Does anyone need to recuse themselves for any of these licenses or? No, all right. And with that, is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Councilor Trumbull, second by Councilor Deering. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the ayes have it. Consent agenda is adopted. That takes us to item 6 on the agenda, the city clerk and treasurer's report.
Just a couple things, a reminder that the water and sewer bills are out and due by the end of the month, actually by January 3rd, because of the way the holiday falls. So stop into the office or mail in your payment or use the Dropbox or pay online. All those are options. And then a continuing reminder as a lead up to town meeting that on the election section of the city website, there's information about town meeting, for potential candidates. There's a list of all the offices being that are up for election. Nominating petitions are there and consent to candidate forms. And I'm happy to talk to anybody who has any questions about what running for office and what happens around town meetings. So that's all I got.
All right, thank you. Any questions for the clerk treasurer?
2 questions.
Yeah, Councilor Deering?
Do you happen to know by chance when petitions need to be done with and when the ballots are going to be mailed out?
January 23rd, which is the 6th Monday before the election, is the deadline for nominating petitions and consent of candidate forms. They have to be returned to my office by 5 o'clock that day. Ballots are available 20 days before the election as per statute. We try to get them out sooner than that, but if you think about the warning that the council approves is usually done 30 days before, and then we have to go to the printers and we have to get, so we do everything we can to get them out 20 days or before.
Sure.
20 days is what we're required by law. I am preparing, similar to what we did last year, a postcard to go to all active voters in the city that lets them know, hey, it's that time of year to request ballots for the year. At the moment, this is the only election we have scheduled is town meeting, but they can request ballots for the whole year. And so that will be going out to all mailboxes in the city. That's a cheaper way than to actually do it by mailing address. So they should be going out right after the first of the year.
Thank you so much. You're amazing.
Clerk Treasurer Dawes, I did have a question about the BUSD school district positions. So there's 2 seats for terms of 3 years. Are those listed as separate offices or is it the top 2 vote getters?
It's the top 2 vote getters.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
yeah, and they're running at large citywide.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions for the clerk? All right, hearing and seeing none, that takes us to the next item on our agenda, which I have lost. Yeah. Thank you. The Liquor Control and Cannabis Control Board, which I don't think we have any items for. Okay, so then that's the city manager's report. Item A.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple updates for council. ARPA update. So the survey closed last Friday. So thank you. We got over 300 responses. So thank you to all the residents who took the time to make their voices heard about the priorities for use of this funding. And as I mentioned, now the next step, which is already underway, is to create a report to the council about what that survey said. So looking forward to that process. In addition, we have now 21 letters of interest received. As you may recall, when we opened the survey, I believe that we were at 12. So about 9 have come in afterwards, which the only drawback is we didn't get public feedback on them through the survey, but those will be included in the materials council gets so that you can see what's rolled in after the survey went live. Strategic planning update. Just a heads up for council, they're planning to bring that to the council on the 24th of January to have the whole group discussion with Jim Burson, who will be available to join us for that. FY24 budget process update. As you know, next week, the council meeting will be at 6 p.m. at Alumni Hall. And this is to really replicate our budget seminar of previous years. So we will be starting a little bit earlier in Alumni Hall where we have the screens for the spreadsheet and a little bit more room. So we will have a small light agenda and then really get into the work with our assistant manager, Don, will be there to man the spreadsheet as we go through the budget. Just some updates on weather response planning, since we have some weather headed this way this weekend, but we've worked with police, fire, DPW facilities on some streamlined weather response communications and operations, making sure that the key entities in the city are coordinated in terms of the beginning of road the salting, the pre-treatment. Thank you. Couldn't find the word. And just making sure we were getting various areas in the city that needed attention, for example, the apron at the fire department. So really, this was a good first test, this really light snow last week, but excited that we might get maybe a real shot to test it out with a bigger storm coming our way, which leads me into a reminder about the parking ban because of the storm coming. Make sure you are abiding by it. Cannot be parked on city streets from 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. except in designated spaces with a permit. And Clerk Dawes, I don't know if we have any permits left. I know we were close.
We don't have any permits left for the period of time between now and the end of the month.
Okay.
But we do, for the 2023 permits, they go on sale the end of this week.
Great.
Of course, they're not effective until the 1st of January. So, and we already have a waiting list composed,
Right.
so.
So come see Clerk Dawes to get on that waiting list.
Yeah.
But the compliance has been great so far with the parking ban. So thank you to the residents who are doing that and making sure that we can keep our streets clear. And as Clerk Dawes mentioned last week, we are working on a pilot program on some alternate side parking, which we're looking to roll out in a couple of weeks. But we are excited about that moving forward as well. And then one last update. This is also kind of a future business update, but a couple of weeks ago, I presented a committee reset proposal. Got a lot of feedback myself directly. I'm sure council's probably hearing from people as well. But just wanted to sort of give a heads up that for the committee agenda on council agenda on the 3rd of January, planning to have an agenda item for people to come in and give you their opinion directly. I think it's better for you to hear it from the stakeholders and have me filter it. So for January 3rd, we'll have a council agenda item for committee members of the public to come and say what they would like and give you their suggestions and feedback. I've already reached out to committee members, committee chairs and vice chairs and asked them to let their members know. And so just wanted to let them know that there'll be an opportunity to comment. And that's it.
Great, thank you for that. And on the committee reset, will there be any additional, I know the staff has made their pitch for a reorg. Will there be any additional information on the third in terms of, how many members are on the committees that are going to be consolidated to help us see how those potentially could
Yes.
move?
I'm gonna have a listing of what our membership looks now, what and what the seats would look like under the proposal that I made as well. So we'll have we'll know if there's gonna be what kind of overlap or lack of overlap. And I don't anticipate a lot of substantive changes to what I propose. I think it's better for people to react to something that is not a moving target. I think the one from our initial discussion, I think the one comment, Maria, that you'd made about and I see Chair Brian Rose here as well from the ADA committee, but I thought the ADA committee, I had placed it with the Civic Centers committee. I think that struck me as maybe an incomplete place to put them. So that's the only change I can anticipate on my end. Otherwise, I think it's easier for people to just react to something that they've seen
Great.
already.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. Any other questions for the city manager? Oh, hi, Bern. Welcome. Nice to see you in person.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Bernadette Rose and I'm a resident of Berry City. Mr. Manager, I just wanted to check with you about the letter of interest that I submitted on behalf of the ADA regarding the website using that program that we found helpful. And I understand we now have an IT person.
We do.
Do you need me to file some kind of formal recall of that or?
No, we don't.
just take it off the books?
I don't think we need to at this point. Yeah, I think we can still, we'll still keep holding until we do it.
Okay,
So, but yes, Ryan is our new IT person. He's taken this on and I've mentioned to him that he'll be one of the folks we engage when we get to that point. When we get to a point of demoing something for the new website.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
I just didn't want it to be there if we didn't need it there.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the manager? I think on the 20th, are we going to get a list of the capital budget items proposed for the next fiscal year?
I think the 20th is going to be more general fund operating budget.
Okay,
Yeah, the capital plan is looking like early January. It's been a challenge to not to whittle it down, but to streamline it. We're going through basically a quality control process from the first draft you saw. And there's a lot of projects, a lot of need. And so we're trying to right now go through with department heads about project descriptions, project timeframes, project costs to make sure that it's as close to final as we can. It's just, it's been a lot of volume. So that's why it keeps kind of slipping a little bit.
well, even if the plan's not totally ready, just knowing what's in the hopper. for
Yes,
next year
exactly.
would be, yeah,
Exactly.
a good short-term thing.
Yep.
All right, so that, unless there's any other questions for the city manager, that takes us to unfinished business, which we had none. And so the new business, we have our FY 22, and I should probably say audit on the agenda. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We did that.
And we have an auditor, I believe, joining us tonight, and I manager. Did you kick it off or Mr. Duplessis?
We can hand it over to Mr. Duplessis unless Assistant City Manager Don Monahan has anything to say.
Oh, Fred can lead off. Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Hi, Don. How are you? Good evening, everybody. So, as you're aware, I think you all have the audit now, either electronically or I think we sent over a bunch of bound copies. So there's 3 deliverables that come as in the audit, and this is an audit that's done in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards, which is the standards for any audit. But because of state statute, it's also done in accordance with government auditing standards, which are more stringent and require a report on compliance with laws and regulations and internal control to be included in with the bound document. So in the audit report, there are 2 letters. The rest is your financial statement. There's the auditor's report at the beginning and then the letter in the back. The other 2 items that are deliverables is a letter of recommendations, and then a kind of a wrap-up letter to the board to indicate how the audit went. And it went very smoothly. I mean, basically, it's a letter that said that we were cooperated with fully, your staff was ready. Dawn prepared the financial statement. That's actually pretty rare. We end up preparing most of our clients' financials. There's just a handful that have that ability, and you're one of them. So I'm not going to go through the numbers. I think they're all familiar to you now. I don't think there's anything in here that you haven't seen already. But I will talk to the letters. The opinion on the financial statements is on page 1, and what it tells you in the second paragraph is that you prepare and present your financials in full conformance with generally accepted accounting principles for governments. And that's true for all opinion units. So when we give an opinion on the financial statements, we're actually opining on each major fund, the general fund, every major fund, the water, the sewer, and then the government as a whole. So individually and in aggregate, that's a clean, unmodified opinion. The bottom of the page would indicate that there is a change in accounting principles this year related to leases. All leases greater than a year will now show up on your balance sheet, either as a lessor or as a lessee. Because the only lease that would have qualified expires or will expire in May, the transmitter lease on the odd, that's considered a short-term lease. So there was no impact this year. But going forward, there could be some impact with this new standard, but it didn't have any effect on you this year. As I've said before, what I typically read when I go to a financial statement is management's discussion and analysis, and that's on page 4 and runs for about 10 or 11 pages. And really in those pages, you really get a good sense of what happened during the year. It discusses things, why things happened, talks about budget variances, and it even speaks a little bit to what's going on in terms of the budget you're in now. In the middle, there's another 90 or so pages of the financial information that I said you're all aware of, and I will answer any questions if you have them. But in the very back is the letter I alluded to earlier on compliance and internal control. And that, like the opinion on the financials, is a clean letter. We had no compliance issues, and we had no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. So it's a clean report. And what that should indicate to you is that you've really got a good system of checks and balances, good internal controls, so that you should be able to rely on the information you get week to week, month to month, and that when the audit comes out, there really shouldn't be any surprises because you have a good system internally. We had just a couple of recommendations in the recommendation letter. The one was simply, as we just said, you have a good system, and we think you just need to beef up the documentation of that system. So we're just encouraging you to document the internal control system in a format that the feds like to see, and the state. We've talked before about consolidating the delinquent receivable program with the current receivable program. I know that's a bigger process. I think that's been discussed, and I'm not sure if it's happening or it's in the works, but we do encourage you to do that. We think there's a lot of reasons why that makes sense. And then lastly, we just want you to take a look at the administrative charges that you charge to the water and sewer fund, just to make sure that they make sense, that you're charging them adequately for services provided and not overcharging them. So we just want you to take a look at those amounts and make sure they're still reasonable. And that's really it. Those are the only issues we had. None of them, as I said, rise to the level either of a material weakness or a significant deficiency, but they are things we just want you to consider. I'm happy to answer any general or specific questions if there's any.
Yeah, thank you for that overview, Fred. One thing on the water sewer enterprise, is there any chance that it could be overcharged versus under, why do you say overcharged versus undercharged?
I'm sorry, go again.
The Water Sewer Enterprise,
Yep.
fund. You mentioned that there may be, an undercharging.
No, what I said is that we just want you to look at it to make sure that the charge is reasonable. It's going to be an estimate. You're not going to get it right down, but we think it's just a good idea to every so often take a peek at the methodology used to charge the other funds for all the services provided by the general fund, just to make sure it's reasonable. Not too high or too low, but just a reasonable number. We think it is right now. We had no problem with what's being charged, but we're just encouraging you from time to time to take a look at that.
I'll look to our accountant on council first to see if he has any questions. So
We actually went through that exercise. Good to see you, Fred, by the way.
You too, Tom.
You know, God bless you for auditing. No, we went through that exercise with Fred. It was quite a number of years ago, so I think he's probably spot on that we should, hopefully we could find the spreadsheet where we broke down the services that the general fund provided on behalf of the enterprise fund. So we should probably do that again, and maybe a good time to do it would be when we're reviewing the budget. If Don has time to do that.
Steve and I looked at it a few years ago and we were still okay, but it would be wise to look at it again now going into 24.
Councilor Stockwell?
I don't really know enough to ask this question well, but like, what are the administrative charges to the water and sewer funds? How does that work from the general funds?
So
Go ahead, Fred.
nope, go ahead.
No, you.
So and Don could probably tell you the details better than I could in terms of what specifically is in there, but there are services that are provided by the various offices, the treasurer's office, finance office, the office of the manager, and other offices, IT in the future, that are provided to all of the departments. And the administrative charge is simply gathering those and coming up with an estimate of what those charges are to make sure that the enterprise funds are carrying their fair share of all of those costs, so that the right user group is being charged, the sewer and water users versus the taxpayers. So it's an estimate, but as long as it's reasonable, then we're comfortable. And as Don said, they looked at it a couple of years ago. We just think it's probably a good idea to do that every few years because things change.
Thank you. That was helpful. So it's like the administrative percentage you can have if you're applying for a grant. Only so much you're figuring out what are the administrative costs to run a program. Never mind. I got it. Thanks.
Okay.
You don't need to go there.
I don't know if there's anything else.
Great. Well, thanks for all the good work to get to this point. I know it's a lot of work to pull all the documents and to get a clean bill of health. So really excited about that. Thank you.
Good. You're welcome. All right. We'll have a good rest of the meeting.
And if I may, Mayor Don, this is a reflection on the work that you and Carol and the rest of the staff, not you yet, Nicholas, because you were only here a short time. No, it is. And not all municipalities get a clean audit opinion. And, it is a big deal. And it wasn't all that long ago, probably a decade or more, Carol, that the city was not receiving a clean audit opinion. So thank you, Dawn, and thank you, everybody, for that good work.
And I would recommend that if you do nothing else, it is worth reading the MD&A, the management discussion, because it really is sort of a narrative of the year. And so it gives you a better idea than just looking at a lot of numbers. So.
All right.
All right.
So no other comments or questions, that takes us to the Central Vermont Public Safety Authority FY 23, 25 through 25 budget presentation from the Central Vermont Public Safety Authority Board Chair, Donna Bates. Hi, Donna. Welcome.
If I may, while Donna joins, Thank you, Don, for being here. So what you had in the packet, we got initially a request from CVPSA for an increase, which triggered the request to have the meeting. And I think Chair Bate is gonna comment on some changes that happened last week about the request. So I shared with you in your packet the original request and try to lay out the context that we're gonna hear some updates from Chair Bate.
Right, thank you. I really appreciate all the work you do for Barry. It takes a lot of effort and audits are difficult, so it's always good to know no hotspots. But there is a matter going on with the Central Vermont Public Safety Authority, and I'm here very sadly to say that last Thursday, the Central Vermont Public Safety Authority Board voted to go ahead and advance a plan to dissolve the Central Vermont Public Safety Authority. And it's very disappointing, but that it seems that its time has come to either let the cities decide to do another kind of organization. We had hoped that maybe you would take on the charter and use it. It took 4 years to write that charter. We had a committee for 4 years. And we had representatives from the city councils in both cities, as well as Central Vermont Chamber. We had Barry Town, we had Berlin involved. It took a lot of time to make that charter and to go through the legislators. And we do think regional public safety is the way to go. And when I proposed starting this in 2006, when I was chair of the Central Vermont Chamber of Commerce Board, it was because it makes sense to have no town boundaries when it comes to public safety. It should be the nearest ambulance, the nearest fire department, the nearest police, and the dispatching and the personnel gain from a better size than all these little towns. And so I'm hoping the idea is not lost, even if this particular configuration was not a total success. Likewise, the Central Vermont Public Safety Authority Board voted not to make any requests come March. And we did have a request from Barry City and Montpelier to help support an impact study. The state has asked the two cities to expand their dispatch services. And they know it'll make an impact on the existing services. So the state has asked the cities to do this and to do an impact study. So we'll better assess for both city councils, Montpelier and Barry, and the public safety departments to assess, can we take on this much dispatching with our current configuration of equipment, staffing, and just facilities of the offices themselves. And so I believe this idea was proposed to the Public Safety Authority last week. And there's we had a straw vote. We didn't do a formal vote. We're waiting to do that at our annual meeting on the 19th. But it seems like it is supported and it would be a way to go. Definitely the cities need to evaluate what the state wants them to do before they sign on to do it. And so I think always, I feel appointed consultants are great. They have the expertise to go in and help assess that impact, assess what's needed within the operations that now exist to take on more dispatching. The state itself is in a real bind. And that's why they're trying to actually look, not trying, they're looking to regional public safety dispatching because they overloaded themselves with too much free dispatching as the volume kept increasing everywhere. And they're now knowing they have to get out of the business. And hence the regional dispatch funding that came through, of which Montpelier and Barry and Capital West are approaching for equipment that came out of a need assessment that the regional planning, the Public Safety Authority funded. And I feel that's where we've been successful. And so I really don't want the councils, Barry or Montpelier, to drop the ball and realize that when the Public Safety Authority has put before voters, we need money to do a needs assessment. They voted in both cities very strongly to support that. $50,000. And they also supported the fact that we wanted to invest in more consultant work. And so we had money that we were able then to hire someone to come in and do an RFP about the equipment that was mentioned in the needs assessment. So then we had something when the Department of Public Safety said, oh, there's money available. We had that already. And we hired them again to help us with that application because it was in less than 3 weeks. And it had very, very technical information that had to be provided. So I feel like in that way, we've
absolutely use the funding to support and improve public safety in both cities, but also in our surrounding towns. And Barry and Montpelier always outreach to the communities when you need. Mutual aid is automatic. And so it ought to be automatic all the time, is hiring and sharing resources in our locations. So I'm really hoping that you'll keep that in your forefront. And I suggest you might want to consider always separating your public safety request on your city ballot. Take it out of the general fund. Look at it, especially when it comes to equipment, training, because that's what we paid for. Equipment, training, studies. And if you put it out there and you tell the public what it's for, and that was the thing that I think is so important about having an exclusive public safety entity, is we're not competing with sewer and street plowing and all the other things as a city council you have to deal with. We're looking just at the public safety needs and as broadly as possible to maximize our resources regionally. So really consider that. It might be something that will surprise you. The voters will support again and again. And I just think your staff is incredible. The Chief Brent, who just retired, he and Joe, the current interim chief, have been so helpful, always availing their expertise, helpful, positive, and definitely a real link to Capital West for the Public Safety Authority. You've just been superb, and I hope you appreciate them. And your dispatchers who've taken yes to our training, and the mutuality between them and Montpelier have increased tenfold. You know, the story was the drawbridge between Barry and Montpelier. Well, I really think your public safety staff have put that down. I don't think it'll go up again. And I hope all the drawbridges between all the communities will go down when it comes to public safety. And I'm here for any questions. Thank you.
So just to clarify, the budget request is 0.
Yes.
Any questions for Chair Baker?
It's this side of I'm curious as to, I'm assuming because the charter lives for another year beyond.
Well, there's some questions about that, because if you read how the withdrawal happens, if within 3 years of being established, the Public Safety Authority does not construct or improve a structure, I mean, we have no bonds between us.
Yeah.
It can be a shorter period of time, I believe.
My question.
That's what we're looking for. That's why we're advancing a plan to really, there's so many interpretations when you read anything legal, and the charter is very legal. And so we're studying that, we're advancing to see what we need. We know that both cities or either city could vote and put it before their voters in March to withdraw. And then it is usually a year. But if a member withdrawals, then the board can say, oh, what are we going to do with only one member? And could actually say at that point to dissolve the whole organization.
So my question has to do with the board seat that's up for election. I'm assuming we will go through with the election of the.
That's one of those questions to ask, because yes. We are going ahead with our annual meeting on Monday, the 19th. And at that point, we have several things in our agenda. One is the request for the impact study for the dispatch expansion. And looking at what we have found about requirements to dissolve and what we do at large, how we put somebody on the ballot if we feel that the organization is not going to exist.
Yeah.
Yeah, so very sad. I mean, I remember, I think, I'm pretty sure you were on council in Montpelier when, but I mean, when we first started.
Yep.
You were sitting right in the corner, and I remember it's really sad for, like you said, 4 years of getting this. The question that I have for you is, one, what's your opinion as to why it was not a success? And 2, what's the downside of keeping the structure of the Central Vermont Public Safety Authority there, just in case we need it, because we are moving. I mean, the state of Vermont's looking into, regionalizations, and who knows, maybe they'll pull an Act 46 on us, right?
No.
And then we would have that charter set up, all ready to go, and just to go.
That's
you
right.
know, so
And you could amend it. Now, the
Right.
amendment still have to go back to the legislature, but I'm totally.
that'd be so much easier
One
then.
of the options is for the board to vote to go dormant.
Okay,
And so then you don't meet, but the charter exists. And again, we'd have to check again legally, how long can that happen?
okay.
I don't have the answers now, but that's certainly one of the things on my list to check out. So absolutely.
I know that, to me, that sounds like a really good idea, because
Mhm.
to just get just leaving there, and I understand. It's really sad. It really is sad.
But it's been 8 years. It was formed, the committee started in 2009. Chamber started the idea in 2006. 2009, we had a committee. 2014, we had our first board meeting. So it's been 8 years. that we've
Yeah.
had a-
So why do you think it wasn't a success?
I think that if
You were closest to it. I mean,
That's the same thing as why we ended up with 2 members instead of 4. The select boards would not let us go to the voters. Barry and Montpelier sent it to the voters and the voters said, yes, we want a regional authority. The select boards wouldn't let us go to the voters without petitioning. And we, at the time, we didn't have any staff for a while. And then to try to petition all the signatures for all the towns, we decided we wanted to have the support of select boards. We felt that without that, even if we petitioned, we wouldn't, maybe not succeed. And maybe that was the wrong way. We should have petitioned and had signatures and gotten on the ballot. I think the voters now, from my experience, would have voted for it. But the select boards kept changing. That's why when we started with the committee, we had 4, we even had Northfield involved, but the select board kept changing. And so then the poor people who thought positive about it left. And so that was really hard. I think it's really hard for a council or a select board to give up authority. I mean, that always scared people. And no matter how many times the Central Vermont Board said, no, we're not out to save money. In fact, we know it'll cost more at the beginning, but we do think we'll have a better system, a more efficient system. And one thing that just, I almost feel people miss, I think that's what would keep employees, is that with just the right size, actually ideally is around 18,000, 20,000, which is what our 4 core towns would have given us initially, is the right size to then have a public safety authority as far as expenses and personnel power. And then you have promotions, you have expansion. And now we all steal from one another, right? I mean, you hire somebody, they want to get promoted, they go to another town, especially dispatchers. I mean, we're chasing them all over the place, but I think you are for police officers, you know, yes, right? And so I think that's it. The other thing that's really important is that if you can see the benefits and really believe them, okay, you're not going to save money, but you are going to start containing cost because you're not going to be redundant on equipment. You're going to have dispatching so much better for a much better price because you can get all that technology, grants like regional, federal grants, especially like regional. And now the state has finally, I think you're right, with the state finally saying, oh, regional really sounds good to us. We can get rid of our dispatching. If they can gain something, they always see the benefit. So I think that's it. And giving up power, Vermont thinks local. It's just, it's hard.
So, and I didn't give you any warning about this. I actually don't think I'm gonna move towards the removal tonight. What I would love to see from you guys is what you're planning on doing. Are you thinking about going dormant, which would be, this way the structure stays in place. And I think that's really important for the future as we're going through and looking at the grant that was submitted by Montpelier. They use Central Vermont, don't they? It was a regionalization.
The need assessment study.
Right, to get the grant.
Our consultant did, yep.
So, I mean, there's benefit to having the structure there. The concern that I have as a counselor is you vote to say, I want a, $2 million grant, right? Or not a grant, but a bond out, $2 million. That's where my, where I start, councils get up, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and that's
authority.
That's the concern that I have, and maybe a small amendment to.
See, ideally, it's always interests me, both cities have 2 appointments. And the beginning was there would always be public safety staff in those appointments. So that again, you've got a real good tie-in of equipment and expertise. And so any bonding would go back to the city councils and say, okay, what are you supporting for equipment? And what do you need? It's not just frivolous. So I think there could have been a much higher buy-in, but neither city chose to do that.
Right, and I understand that. I'm just saying that, from a keeping the structure there perspective, if, from my perspective, I would say, go dormant. And this way, have a meeting once a year and say, this year we're not doing anything, and then maybe changing the charter language for, until the city releases its authority, say that they have to come to the council or select board if we get that for approval.
Yeah, but excuse me for interrupting, but you mentioned that. I think the other weakness was the Public Safety Authority never became its own. It was too responsive to the city councils.
I know.
I mean, that's why we didn't proceed on our own. We didn't integrate your input and then decide. We were like puppets. And so it was bound to fail until it became itself. I mean, look at all the other regional things you have. You have a representative there, but they're not the direct arm of a city council. So that to me was a fail.
I completely get that. I completely get that. Think of the dispatch, we ceded authority for dispatch and, then it came back to us and the concern was because of the jail cells. How's that working for us now? Because we could go dark now and it wouldn't have the effect and concern that we had 6-8 years ago when
things change.
Yeah. And I just, I'm not there.
Yeah.
And I would encourage council not to just leave the authority.
It's
And
not
just-
on the agenda.
Just
this
to be clear, I'm pretty sure there's no question on. There's a motion then?
I thought it was a resolution to move the person to. I apologize if that sounds.
The city.
That's just to withdraw.
So, and so, guys, so, you don't have to apologize. I was right, okay.
Sorry about that.
I did vote to advance the plan to withdraw. And just, I've been on this group very, very short time and don't have the historical perspective that you have. But I also really believe it was a great idea, but I think as it exists right now, it's kind of run its course. And it's, I don't perceive it to be working. So I recommend that. But for the reasons you're talking, can we hold something in place? Can we do something to have it be a placeholder just in case would be great. But at this point, I'm good with it ending.
Manager Carol Castro.
Yeah, and I agree with Councilor Shambal and Don, I think you've come to a very difficult decision, but I think it was the right decision, or at least the one that the board, CVPSA board took last week or the week before. I think just echoing Councilor Shambal's points, I think you also, Donna, mentioned some challenges that I don't think we have solutions to at CVPSA. There'd be challenges even if it were dormant that would exist were to not be dormant anymore. And so I think that's, that's a concern. At this point, one of the things you meant, there's only 2 municipalities in it. So how regional really is it if we have these, and I don't have the historical context either, but knowing that there was just
any time.
Right. We can, right. But I think so how regional is it at this point with it? It's just us in Montpelier.
Yeah.
And
we did Capital West for a while.
Right.
That was good.
Yeah. And I think the other piece is that we do have really strong relationship with Montpelier. And I've been learning about just the as you mentioned as well, the with the dispatching, the training that they do, the cross training that they do. And so I think that because the challenges present with CVPSA wouldn't go away just by making it dormant and wouldn't be fixed by just being dormant. The fact that it's really only 2 municipalities and having this entity in the middle that just will maybe just add ambiguity to our relationship in our public safety. That's why I agree with Councilor Shambal that it's time to move on.
And if I could add to that, the fact that you have this potential capital coming and buying equipment and working together in that way, I mean, that's huge. And that the state is asking you to take on more towns to dispatch. And those are all wonderful. And when George Malik was the president of Center Vermont Chamber, when we started talking about this in 2005 and 2006, and he says, Donna, there are a lot of plans on my shelf about regionalized public safety. They haven't made it across the line. Let's see if we can do it. Okay, so we made it across the line. We did some things. And maybe this is where it ends and another one comes up because now you've seen some things and you're in a different place and the state's in a different place. So something else can be born from it. I don't think we've lost anything at all by existing, even though we didn't meet the vision that we had. So I think in that way, there's been some really positive things that have come out of it.
Yeah. Stephen,
Yeah, go ahead.
Stephen, you will speak, but I did have a couple questions, and I think in the context of just affordability in Berry City, and hearing from people all the time that they're just concerned about whether or not they're going to be able to continue to afford to live in the city, and I think mutual aid is great, but I'm gonna be the Scrooge and say there needs to be regional equity, and I've never seen, and I don't see that in the governance structure of Central Vermont Public Safety Authority. It can't always be. It's about who pays and who benefits, and it can't be always Berry City people paying for the services that go to other towns. And I'm concerned about that, and I'm concerned about our public safety dollars being sucked out to richer towns around us. If that's happening, I don't know if it's happening, but if it is happening, that'd be an equity concern for me. And now the state's divesting from a lost leader, and we're going to presumably take that on. And what's to say that it's not going to be a lost leader for Berry City too? And this is really,
You see, the state provides dispatching free to over 100 towns.
Yeah.
You would have a contract, and that means that the towns have to acknowledge it costs money. Everyone else is paying. Now we have to start paying.
Yeah.
And you're right. Right now, as the only members, Berry and Montpelier are paying. And the idea, if you had in your next evolution of regionalization, you'll have other town members and they'll contribute.
Yeah.
Just like in Capital West, they have a whole allocation based on population and services.
Yeah, and to Council Bloom's point, it seems like, if I were to, from the outside looking in, and I'm mainly very novice about the very complex work that the district has been doing, it seems like the governance structure was never really in place because the towns didn't fully buy into a devolution of authority, and they still wanted to retain local service delivery. And so, and I don't know, I would just worry about Vermont governance in general, and that we have the Central Vermont Public Safety Authority, and we have the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission, we have the Regional Development Corporation, and we have a Solid Waste Management District, and all of these organizations are admittedly struggling. And full disclosure, my partner is an outgoing executive director of one of those organizations. And there are, opportunities, I think, for efficiencies in admin and finance and IT and communications. And regionally, it seems like we've never really had the will to start looking at shared services in a comprehensive way and not a siloed way.
Yeah.
And it seems like, to me, I worry that some of the siloing of services has been part of the challenge of regional efforts. Certainly, if there were a regional entity that said we'll do assessment right now, I'd be a yes vote for that, because we've been without an assessor. I mean, we've had an acting assessor for 2 years, and so it seems like as a region we need to have a real discussion again about regional services, and maybe start with something smaller. But as you point out, there it seems like the opportunities right now, there's this money right now, right? And as what I'm hearing you saying is that Montpelier and Berry, and I staff speak up if I'm off the wall on any of this, but that we can take that money and we can provide dispatch services to the surrounding towns, and it's gonna be financially sustainable and more equitable. Is that gonna,
For the impact study is to look at that. Yes.
and so who's paying for the impact study if the budget's zero?
We've been approached.
They have a fund balance.
Safety Authority still has a
Yeah.
few dollars in its bank. And we obviously would want to put it to public safety services. And so that's what the board is considering on the 19th. When we meet again next Monday,
Mhm.
is to whether or not we'll be giving, right now was, the request was up to 25,000. They just had an estimate of what they think the analysis of the impact and the operational assessments of the two dispatch centers in Barry and Montpelier, and what would happen to both of them if they got these increased amount of towns and doing their dispatching.
And so what's the use case for the Televate report that
The Televate report was the need assessment, which went through all the equipment. It did not talk about how many dispatchers.
Okay.
It went through all the equipment, all those old towers we got in 1990 that's sitting out there and held together with safety pins. The staff, your public safety staff all over the region have done such good work with such bad equipment. So that's what we really need, is to getting that equipment. We're one step away from a crisis.
Mhm.
It fails and all sorts of things starts dominoing.
Councilor Lozo?
Thank you. So I think we all understand, even when I thought about budget time this year, a number of months ago. I knew then that I just couldn't support this. I watched the progress. And Don, I was one of the biggest cheerleaders, a decade ago when we started this. We should have regional water, we should have regional wastewater, we should have regional stormwater, we should have regional land records. I mean, we just love doing things the most expensive way we possibly can in Vermont. And Mayor, to answer your question, it's always bothered me that some municipalities don't have to pay for public safety at all. And yet on the state level, our tax dollars support them because that's where the state police go when they're needed, not in communities like Barry or even Barrytown and Montpelier. But you had to get me going, so I digress. Thank you.
But they now
Now,
recognize this.
you did some good work and it's important, and maybe someday we can stop having the turf wars and stop pretending that we actually have control over something when control is just one big illusion, and work together and people will get better service. I mean, it wasn't that many decades ago that municipalities had their own telephone company and their own electric company.
Yep.
And then the federal government smartened up and said, well, this isn't fair because rural areas can't afford these things, and they live differently, and that's not right. So the federal government got involved, and I don't see that happening here, but I do, Councilor Bruton, have concerns about or Mayor, have concerns about dissolving. I don't feel like I have enough. We know that we're not sending any money. It's likely that we won't send a representative, but we spent a lot of money on that document. And I'd like to know that if someone says, well, you can just set the document aside, put it in the file drawer, and if you ever need it, you pop the document out, you don't have to keep the board alive. You've got the charter that you can just reactivate, then, okay, I'd feel a lot more comfortable. I'd feel dumb if I made a decision with incomplete information and then I found out 2 months from now that we threw away $80,000 or whatever the number is of value.
Yeah.
So again, I'm not interested in the city withdrawing,
Time.
but I just want to make sure we think it.
Yeah.
I'm interested in supporting the manager's recommendation. I just want to make sure that we've thought everything through before we simply dissolve it and wish perhaps later on we hadn't.
I think that's certainly the challenge for all of us between now and the deadline for the March ballot.
Right.
Is to know what the alternatives are, whether we'll have at large on the ballot. But when that due date was January 23.
Are you confident that we'll get those answers by then?
Well, I would hope so. Otherwise, it's going to be a really difficult ballot. To plunk things on there when we are underlyingly working to dissolve. So I hope to have those answers. Absolutely. I don't see why not.
Okay, thank you. very much. And thank you to you and board members and the people who
Yeah.
put so much work into the idea. I really do, because you know what? You should have felt unsupported because you were. And I apologize for that.
Well, and you've got Mel's great. Jim has been on there. Jim hits a term limit this March. I do. Doug Hoyt does. I think he's online. Doug, Kim Cheney and I have been on since 2014. And Doug and I hit our term limits first, and then Jim for his appointment, and then Kim will be next. And then, so it's like also the board has totally changed. Yeah, but you've given some great representation on the board. And again, your staff has been incredible. So thank you.
Thank you again, Don.
Thank you.
So
And
I'll keep posting you.
Oh, fantastic.
Good evening. This is a issue that I've worked on communications for a much longer time, but I've spent quite a few years, a handful of years on this particular regional public safety communications. The Televate study would not have happened if I hadn't have jumped in and started going to meetings and built support for it. The Televate study is incomplete. It does not.
Item on the agenda, Mayor.
I understand we're talking about the governance of Central Mount.
Yeah, I think we talked about the study, but it's me.
I didn't recall Mr. Fraser recognizing part of advocating for that study, but to the point of the budget and the future of the Public Safety Authority.
Is the least advisable time to put this in mothballs. There's $10 to $20 million coming down the pipeline, and a condition set in the legislature and in the RFP is governance, and the governance is lacking here. Secret meetings, excluding the public, not keeping minutes. There's no notes from the meeting that the city managers and chiefs participated in last week with the Commissioner of Public Safety. Not a single person took a single bit of notes in that meeting. That is not transparent governance. That's not going to win us any of this money.
You understand that we're not their board, right? We're the Berry City Council here. We're not. So if you're talking about a lack of transparency or an open meeting violation on the part of the board, you do understand that.
I'm not talking about that.
Board.
I'm not talking about that. You misunderstand what I'm saying.
What are you saying?
I'm saying that the only transparent structure that's available right now for regional governance is Central Vermont Public Safety Authority, even if it doesn't have enough members. I mean, this board has been sabotaged from within the board of Central Vermont Public Safety, because no one's facing the conflict of interest. Montpelier has $400,000 a year in revenue coming in from the current arrangement with no transparency, no record keeping. You know, it's abominable.
It's a concern about the government structure, and that you would like to.
I'm saying that you
have them continue. You think it's important that the Public Safety Authority continues?
Well, there were two committees of the Public Safety Authority, one to get new members and another to propose charter changes. I've done a whole lot of work talking to surrounding towns. Why didn't they join? They didn't join because they were afraid that their departments would be dissolved or subsumed, that their fire and police would come under a regional, a county scale fire and police department. That was no one's intent, although there is some merit to at least having a safety net. If small volunteer fire departments fail, there needs to be a mechanism of an organization in place with fiduciary capability to fill those gaps. You can't have a mutual aid association committing the resources of the select boards to fill for a failed department.
Mm-hmm.
That's something coming down the line. You know, we will see failure of these volunteer departments. So narrowing the purpose of the CVPSA to be communications and training, which is what it's mostly been doing. It's been a little piggy bank for now. You know, here, give me 10,000 for this, 20,000 for that. But no one has done the planning, the engineering for a radio system has not been engineered. In fact, if the Televate study hadn't been persuaded and conducted, these folks were ready to go just buy it. They have no expertise internally.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, yeah.
they're part of this Twin Cities work group.
If you can finish. Question before we want to leave the public safety authority, and I take it the recommendation to us tonight is that we should not do that.
I also think you need to understand why we've arrived at that. You sat here and listened to 25 minutes of argument that is at best misleading. And I think you need to understand why we're in the position we're in. And
no, we don't. No. But thanks for that.
So there is a vote and we have to make a motion on it. I mean, we have to vote on this.
you really don't want to hear any of this.
But I think if someone makes the point that I've heard you say and.
To make.
Yeah. Well, I do think we've given you ample time and respectfully.
Knowledgeable and informed about this topic than the chair that sat here and gave you a bunch of, and it's inappropriate for a staffer to be advocating for a position and contradicting witnesses when he takes part in the secret meetings of the Twin Cities group.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Whitaker. All right, so I think maybe we're at the point where we make a decision. Yes, Mr. Cheney, sorry, Kim.
The question is, what would happen next? What I think is happening at the state level. Let me back up a minute. In the last session of the legislature, the various interest groups tried to persuade the legislature how to have regional public safety. And it was a froth. There were so many different opinions, and what came out of the legislative session was a statute which set up a working group in Department of Public Safety to try to answer the question, how do we solve this problem? And that group was required to make a report on December the 1st, which they did. The gist of that report is the state has a range of different opportunities or workarounds how we can have public safety. It makes no sense at all that somebody in one of our towns has no access to good communications and public safety. The cities need those people. They need them healthy and they need them well. Now, the long range answer to that is there has to be some capital investment, which is coming from the feds primarily and some from the state, to build an infrastructure that works. And with that infrastructure, you need to have a governing system. Right now, if CVPSA were to go out of business, which effectively we've done, we said we're not going to ask for any money. But what happens next? you have a charter that I can see a lot of weaknesses. You asked why the problems here. Well, one of the principal problems was that the public safety people didn't support it. Why? Presumably because they feared that a group of people with no particular expertise would then be supervising their operations. I have long advocated and asked that we get public safety members on the board. But where we're headed, I was shocked at the little ruckus over a meeting with the Public Safety Commissioner. Because it was not a public meeting. And there's no mechanism, if the CVPSA goes out of existence, there is no possible structure that is now in existence to take on a regional system. Nor is there any alternative planning going on. I think the best thing to do is to wait. We're not going to ask you for any money. I mean, as Donna mentioned, I'll be gone soon, so we're going to have to reconstitute this operation. Donna and Doug and others are term limited. We haven't even tried to fill a couple of seats. And I think the kind of meetings we should be having is, how can we amend that charter to get state and federal funding, which is going to require exactly the type of structure that we have now. And not going to give it to the cities. I don't know what this crazy idea is. The city of Montpelier will be a fiduciary and will get capital money and give it out to the towns and the other cities. To me, that's nonsense. If you're going to be a fiduciary, you need to have a plan. You need to have an organization of how it's going to work. And that does not exist. I will predict that this legislature will confirm that if you want state money, and it's going to be the same criteria for some 10 or 18 million more that the Homeland Security is hoping to put into this through earmark, that you're going to require structure very similar to what we have with the Public Safety Authority. What we need to do is sit down is, how can we remake this? Why did we should spend time? Why didn't it work out? How can we restructure this thing? My own thinking is that I'm a believer in getting people together with a stake and sit and talk about it and find out what we can do. And just as CVPSA was born by a bunch of people putting their heads together and thinking, how can we best communicate? How can we best make a regional organization? They came together with a pretty good idea at the time. I think we can do it again, but you've got a structure here. And it's so much easier to amend some of the governance procedures and send them off to the legislature and get it passed than it is to redo a whole new charter. In the meantime, I see no harm in doing nothing in that sense, because no matter what you do, you're gonna have to build a new regional public safety authority. And we should start doing that now with open discussions and with the opportunity for the public to come in, with the opportunity for people to know what's happening and to participate. And we did it once, we can do it better. Absolutely can do it better. We've got new times, we've got a whole new system. And I look forward to the day where public safety is somewhat like schools. Some part is paid on the property tax, but there's a wallop of state aid to help you keep the thing alive, because it is a regional plan. So I'm passionate about keeping this alive and then doing the work to make it work for our time. And in the meantime, it's not costing you any money from us. So, thank you, Al.
Thank you, Mr. Jennings.
I would like to actually say that, you know, Council, you've heard from Chair Bate, you've heard from our Representative Councilor Shambal, I believe, our Representative Jim Ward voted for dissolution. I forwarded you an email from Justin Drescher, which I think is worth reading here to you today, just part of it. I no longer believe that CVPSA is a positive force in the push towards public safety infrastructure upgrades. I believe it's the exact opposite, in that the continued existence of CVPSA muddies the waters and creates significant obstacles to progress. It's difficult for me to imagine a world where CVPSA has any role in governance moving forward. And if it's never going to happen, then I don't believe the organization should exist at all, given both the financial and human capital costs associated with it. Mr. Cheney, you said it doesn't cost us anything. Frankly, I don't know that's true, given your efforts to try to kibosh this grant for the city of Montpelier and Barre. That's $2.4 million that could be cost to the city, which will help us upgrade the equipment that Chair B told us is in dire need of replacement, that our dispatch services are using that are out of date. So quite frankly, I still urge the council to take action. Understand that it may not, but I think the notion that it doesn't cost us anything is not true.
Well, I think you misunderstood what I was saying. We're not asking for dollars.
I know exactly what you said, and I'm saying that CVPA's existence, particularly your efforts to work with the Joint Fiscal Committee to kill this grant, does cost us money, even if it's not at the ballot.
Oh, so, just, you've got a lot of bad information. You and I should sit down and talk about it. So I never asked Joint Fiscal Committee not to support this grant. I asked the Joint Fiscal Committee to support money to get public safety, to get the help that they needed to make a plan so they could meet the legislative. Barre Montpelier, that money wasn't even before the Joint Fiscal Committee. What had happened was they call it the Montpelier grant because that's what it was. It was not approved because they didn't have a governance structure that met the criteria.
So I'll make a motion to remove ourselves from the Central Vermont Public Safety Authority. I would say, Donna, I would like to hear whether or not it can go into dormant. Us making this motion tonight, we can always go back in. And I do want to make.
You know that.
No.
Exactly. And that's Counselor, is why you don't make a decision tonight, because you don't know.
I'm inclined
I withdraw my motion.
Council, as the agenda item, give a true indication of the matter before the body, but I just don't, I feel like this has been so noisy and we haven't been adequately briefed to make a good decision. But Counselor Shambo.
I want to thank you for that comment, because having been on the committee, what little time I've been on, there's been a lot of push-pull that's been very difficult to wade through. And that's part of what gives Dreschler what he's saying, is that it has been really difficult to get through because so many people have not been working together. And that's been difficult. I just have to say that out loud.
Ask who is Mr. Dreschler?
He's an appointee of Montpelier, I believe, on the board. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it seems like the board really isn't acting cohesively as a body.
But actually, the board is acting cohesively as a body. Unfortunately, some members of the board have tried to really hurt the application of Berlin Montpelier to upgrade its radio equipment.
And that's your position, sir? I mean, we can take a vote on that. Because if that's going on, that is contrary to, I mean.
And that's why I believe that CVPSA is unfortunately, because as I think Mr. Dreschler wrote it well, that's why I read his email. I think that it's working against the interests of the city.
Members are, not the.
The board itself is not, no.
Right.
The board has been supportive of applications as a body. Unfortunately, individual members have worked against the grant.
All right, I'll recognize Counselor Stockwell.
Thank you.
Could I just
I would not ever vote to remain with the Public Safety Authority as it is now. It's been years. It hasn't functioned. It goes on. I just can't imagine what would change my mind. However, I will do what the group thinks.
Could I just say, I know
Mr. Cheney.
it should remain, it needs to be restructured. But there's nothing going on that I know of that is trying to restructure it. And I've talked with city manager, and I never get a statement about what the plans are. All I've ever wanted is a good governance structure. And the Barry and Montpelier, the grant proposal at the moment doesn't have it. That's all I've wanted. So.
Councilor Booten?
I almost think that we can enter into it. I think that was part of the original charter language, is that communities can enter into the charter. This is the problem, right? None of it, I mean, it was like, it feels like it was 6-8 years ago that I looked at that charter.
And Council Booten, can I interject and maybe staff could give us more insights into, so what are the alternatives? What are the consequences of, or what are the trade-offs of this potential outcome? Because it could be, it's a big decision, right? It's a change in a regional governance structure that everybody has put a lot of energy into. Obviously, it's had some bumpiness, but I think this body, to make a big decision like this, needs to understand what alternatives were considered and what are the consequences of this decision.
So
Joe.
Yeah, if I don't know, Joe, if you can weigh in on some of that. You've been working on the governance side. I know there's capital, the mutual aid, and then the bylaws there. But if you, Joe, have anything to add about?
Thank you for listening. If you don't have any further questions, but
Thank you,
I
Mr.
would love
Cheney.
to sit down and talk to you if you give me the time.
Yep. All right.
I'll give you a call.
All right. Acting Chief Allsworth.
So the charter is very specific, but I think it needs some interpretation. I think the chair is correct. Chairperson Bate, that we need to have some legal consultation on this to make sure that the city is.
Joe, I think we're, sorry if I misinterpreted. I think you were asking about governance for the government outside the CVPSA.
Yeah, I was thinking, what's the outcome, what's the outcome? What's the consequences if we make this decision? And then potentially if there are, what alternatives were considered?
So I think right now, they're going in the right direction. They need to consult the league and the attorney there, that which they are a member of, correct?
Yes.
So I think that's the next step for them, just to consult the league and get a legal opinion of where they should go and the impacts of both the municipalities on this. I think, yes, there was a lot of formulation of the charter, took 4 years to get this going. And I think that does have some merit. I agree with Councilor Lozon that we should be cautious and really look at exactly what it's going to be impactful. But ultimately, the CVPSA as it functions now is dysfunctional, in my opinion, and I'll let Chief Vale speak on his behalf. But I think that they really need to have some legal opinion of where it's going to go and the dissolution, and then go from there.
And Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, but the grant governance doesn't depend on CVPSA existing. The dispatch governance can exist without CVPSA as the quote unquote governance entity.
The commissioner was very specific to us when they spoke to us, is that they're not going to dictate on the governance portion. She's already stated in the meetings is that governance is specific to the entity, so that contracts that exist are an official form of governance, and that the ones that we have currently in Barry Dispatch and Montpelier Dispatch have been existing for quite some time, and that we have customers that are satisfied and happy, and they renew on a regular basis. So we give them opportunity to negotiate. We give them opportunity to complain or register a complaint, and it's followed through. So that's the type of stuff that they're looking at. The statement that was made in the evaluations about governance, it really was meant towards other folks that had no governance at all, that had no formulated plan, and that they actually used a lot of our documentation and shared it with the state. So they took Capital Fire's bylaws, they took our contracts in both Barry and Montpelier, and they shared it across the state with those folks that were starting from scratch, that were getting shed from the state. So we will actually use as a model our Televate report. We shared that with other places and say, hey, listen, this is what we've consulted with the professionals. This is what we come up with our infrastructure, and move forward. So I don't know if that answers your questions, but that's exactly what we have done. And Commissioner Sherling and then Commissioner Morrison and Captain Burnham all have looked to us to provide those documents as a model for those folks to use.
So if I'm understanding right, it's really the legal consequences of a withdrawal are not 100% clear. The Public Safety Authority is going to get a legal opinion on what happens if the municipalities do withdraw. Is that going to happen? That's going to happen? I'm just I think we're all trying to understand what happens.
As far as any member withdrawing, you would put it before your voters. And then the charter reads a year later, you're free.
Yeah.
Because during that year, you're distributing any capital investment money, such as if we had bought equipment together, then you'd have a year to assimilate that and adjust your budget. It's like a school district. If a school wants to leave that district, has to be a settlement. But because we don't have any capital investment to split up, you may be able to leave earlier. That's the only question I have about the charter is, can you leave earlier but your voters have to vote.
Yeah. Yeah, I would just clarify. I don't think there's a question about the implications of it. I think, and it's very clear in the charter and the statute, I guess it's this charter about the withdrawal of the municipality. I think Chair Bate is correct. It's the timing of it, but there's no other real
And within the charter, once a member leaves, then the board can evaluate the impact of the whole and at that time decide to dissolve. There's also some language that it can decide to dissolve before that. So that's the one that has the question. It's about the board deciding to dissolve before the members exit.
Yeah.
That's the question.
And I think the other question, Donna, that came up during the debate was whether
Oh,
the
yes.
timing of going dormant
If you-
versus withdrawing. I still happen to believe that withdrawal is the
Yeah.
right course.
Yep. Yes, but I don't have any question that you can vote to leave and your voters can vote and you just stop appointing people. You're no longer a member, we no longer can tax your residents.
Counselor Showboat,
For the sake of calling a question, I would like to make a motion that we withdraw.
Second,
this is a motion and a second to withdraw. To accept the manager's recommendation and withdraw from the Central Vermont Public Safety Authority.
I
For
would just,
$10.
for clarification purposes, I would refer to the language that the manager put forward that what we're doing is we're approving putting it before the voters.
Yeah.
Because it's the
Okay.
voters that have to make the
Right,
decision.
okay. So would give me the words.
Uh, it-
Oh, now I have my glasses on. Great. Okay, move to put a question to the voters at the March town meeting seeking to withdraw from CVPSA.
So point of order,
There's,
you can't do this until next week anyway.
we'll have to
It's
ratify.
unwarned, so you can do it tonight.
Okay,
Doesn't mean anything because you can't ratify it till next week. Why don't we do it probably by next week? I could call a couple of people, ask a few questions. I mean, I think I understand, Mayor, there are sort of two things going on. I hear your frustration that there may be a member of the board who is working a position that certainly doesn't sound like is in the best interest of Berry City and the city of Montpelier, for that matter.
Correct.
So that certainly concerns me, but go get them. That's why we pay you. So, yeah, I'm with you there, but again, we've heard enough conflicting opinions that I'm just not sure there are any unintended consequences of doing this the way we're doing it. That's all. And we can't do it till next week anyway, really, because we can't ratify till next week. So if we just put it on the agenda for next week,
So,
no.
Counselor, if I may, I would, I believe Montpelier's is taking up this topic tomorrow. So I think if there was a vote of our council about its intentions, that would also be interesting for Montpelier to, as the other municipality in this public authority, it would inform their next steps as well.
I'll likely vote yes for it next week. Won't vote, just, I just don't vote on something if I don't feel I have all the information. I just don't feel that way tonight.
One more item of
That's all.
deliberation. So the items that have to get on the ballot, we have quite a bit of time before we have to warn any town meeting items.
Right.
Yeah, more than a month.
And so, but under their charter, is there any urgency to
I don't
do
believe
this
so.
right now?
No.
And so I mean, I won't vote in favor of this, feeling like I just don't understand. I don't feel like I understand what's going on. So, Councilor Showboat.
I'm willing to withdraw my motion so that we can put it on the agenda for next week and vote on it.
can we put it on as part of the consent agenda?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And next week is the budget seminar.
Right, never.
Consent agenda. So you're withdrawing your motion, but requesting that it be an upcoming item on the consent agenda, and if the manager. Yeah,
And
All right.
if I may, if it's helpful, I'm on record that I will likely, I don't see a path to not supporting your position. So if you think that's helpful to mention, I mean, on a straw poll of, I would likely vote to withdraw.
Think you got the votes.
all right. All right. So that takes us to upcoming business. We're meeting on the 20th. Up at the auditorium.
Yes, 6 p.m.
We're gonna meet a little bit earlier because we're gonna be going through the full budget. And then I'm trying to think,
And then the committee we set on the third.
the third, okay. Also, we're gonna have a special guest, and I won't give it away until the agenda comes out on the 20th up at Alumni Hall. There's gonna be, I think that's it for upcoming business. Any other items that you want to announce? Oh, okay. And so that takes us to roundtable. I'll start with Counselor Shambell.
I've spoken enough. I pass.
Counselor Stockwell.
I used the ARPA letters of intent for a class activity in my English class. I just said, okay, here's 4 paragraphs about the city of Barry. How would you spend this money? I have to say it was really fun. And they had some great ideas.
Oh, yeah. That's cool.
And I pass.
Thank you. Counselor Burton. Pass. Counselor Lozon.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. We talk a lot about partisan politics, bipartisan politics, tripartisan politics. I was thrilled this week. Karen and I were thrilled to receive an invitation from Senator-elect Welch to attend his inauguration ceremony in Washington. So I think we're going to do it because, as I pointed out to Karen, I said, well, when Patrick Leahy was, when he was sworn in, I was 10. So so like, we tend to keep our senators a long time in Vermont. I said, I may never have this chance again. So in all seriousness, I like I've told the senator-elect many, many times, I like his style. So I think we're going to get out and check it out.
Counselor Deering.
Just had a great time working out with the Spalding High School football players today. Had a small group. A lot of those kids are involved with some other activities. I know you guys can come and check out the hockey teams tomorrow night at the BOR. Both the girls and the boys will be playing 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock. I'll be filming the game for the CB Sports Network. But it's just a great opportunity to come out and see all the things, the positive things that our teams are out there doing in our community.
Thank you, Counselor Deering. And I have nothing for this week either. So that takes us to motion to adjourn by Counselor Lozon, second by Counselor Stockwell at 8:50. All those in favor say aye.
They didn't give me warnings. Frankly, well, I give people warnings. And quite frankly, it was really slow when I made that decision. So, well, no, I don't like I said, I don't like it. Feeling you don't want to know. They're too